Hey folks, Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man at your services. How are you all? I hope you're all doing very, very well. Now, we bang on a lot about remakes. Oh god. Well, okay, I do, and you have to just listen to me. But yeah, we hate them, don't we? But not all the time. Some remakes are really good, and some remakes are exactly kind of what you need as well. Now, one of my favourite creature features of all time, and I've covered it a lot, is Them. That's Them, exclamation mark, from 1954, directed by Gordon Douglas. The big giant ants in the desert, and then in the storm drains of Los Angeles. It's absolute classic. When the 50s are concerned, my favourites are, you all know this anyway, Forbidden Planet, Them, and The Thing from Another World. And I absolutely love all three of these. And let's bring in Tarantula as well. Bring in Tarantula. But yeah, big bug creature features can't be beat. So, James Arness and Edmund Gwenn and some other guy whose name I've now forgotten battle the giant ants. And it's a fable about the atomic age. You know, whereas every other movie in the 50s seemed to be Reds under the beds and communism, this was ants in your pants and radiation. All good stuff. And it is a parable for its times. Now, they're looking to remake it. Now, why would I not be against that? Well, two reasons. The guy remaking it is one of my favourite composers of modern times, Michael Giacchino, who just did Werewolf by Night last year for Disney Plus on a Halloween one-off special, and I loved it. And he scored so many fantastic, well, not so much fantastic movies perhaps, because the Jurassic World movies are in this as well, and the Star Trek reboots. But his scores are always phenomenal, really exciting, really propulsive, very atmospheric, full of colour, full of big orchestrations, and I'm a massive, massive fan of this guy. And he proved he could direct as well. He and his brother, back in, like so many movie makers, back in their youth, would like get old film stock and old cine cameras and video cameras and what have you, and make their own short movies and learn how to make special effects. Then he moved into actually composing for movies, and now he's been giving it a shot to direct his first full actual feature movie. Warner Brothers are talking to him, and he's talking to writers right now about how to quick start a remake of Them. Now, I'm not against this at all, because there's your main reason, Michael Giacchino, who I think will do a bang-up job. And the other thing is, in the original movie, which is I revere, and it's an absolute bona fide classic, the ants are the thing that lets it down. Great story, full of atmosphere, excuse me, and they only made one giant ant, full size, one. Dick Smith, the great makeup supremo, Dick Smith, created this thing, fabricated it with big antennas, big mandibles, moving parts. The rest of the ants are, there's another one which was only half the ant, the front half of the ant, minus the rear carriage. And then all the other ants that you see are actually just heads, antennae, mandibles, and maybe the front legs. But put around the screen, giving the effect of a lot more ants on the rampage. But when you watch it now, and the army are involved, and you know that these ants move pretty fast. So giant ants are going to move very fast as well. So when you've got hordes of these things, and you've got some that are flying, this is what you don't see. You know, and all the advertising blurb for Them was like a horror horde of crawl and crush ants, monster mandibles everywhere, and there's people running down city streets, and there's hordes of these bastards coming after them in like full, gaudy artwork. But you don't see that in the movie, obviously, because they couldn't do it. So it relies more on atmosphere than a lot of what you don't see, and maybe the aftermath of an ant attack. So broken bodies, a caravan and a shop store ripped apart, like, what's done this? But it's genius the way it's done. Now, for a remake, you want to see that horror horde of crawl and crush ants. Now, I know some critics also say that, well, they have remade Them. Jim Cameron made a sequel to Alien and he called it Aliens. And basically it's Them just on an alien planet. And the bugs are just, they stand upright and they're xenomorphs. And his film does pay direct homage to them in the character of Newt, the little girl who's left, in the colony when the colonial marines and Ripley arrive. She's the only survivor there. Well, apart from everyone who's been cocooned, in sub-level 3. We won't go into all that. And Newt mimics the little girl at the start of them, who was found by, what are they called? Not Texas Rangers. What are they? Border Patrol? No, State Troopers. That's what they are. State Troopers. And they find this little girl wandering in the desert, and she's got a broken doll in her hand. And they find a trashed caravan, which obviously she came from, but her parents had been killed, and her father was an FBI guy. Now, we won't go into all this. If you need to know all those details, go and look at my review for it. Or better yet, go and watch them, because it's fucking classic. A masterpiece in horror and suspense and sci-fi, icky creature feature thrills. But she's comatose until they realise, let's try a bit of formic acid, because the ants have formic acid which they pump into the dead body, well, their victims. So each victim's found and they're stuffed to the gills with formic acid. So when they crack a little bit of formic acid open, waft it under her nose, only then does the girl suddenly wake up and screams them. It's beautiful. And Newt is a mutation, shall we call it, of that character. And also, them ends up in the storm drains, the big massive storm drains and labyrinthine tunnels beneath LA. And of course, all of Aliens takes place in labyrinthine tunnels and warrens, and they might not be storm drains, but they are tunnels and corridors, and it is all enclosed, and you've got troops taking out big bugs. Other people have said, well, it was remade as Starship Troopers. Trust me, folks, I've seen people say this. I've seen people write about this. Starship Troopers from Paul Verhoeven is an adaptation of Robert Heinlein's novel, Starship Troopers. Yes, it's got big bugs in it. Yes, and the thing I'm getting to here is, we all love Starship Troopers. It's a gore fest, and the bugs are impressive. Even though this is like, what, early to mid 90s, the CG has been vastly improved since then. But really, has it been improved that much? I've reviewed Starship Troopers as well, and I think the effects still stand up really, really well today. So, but those big props as well for that. But that's what you need to see for a remake of them. You need to see the ants en masse, storming, charging, rampaging, moving at speed, taking down tanks and helicopters and stuff like. How do they take down helicopters? Mind you, they can fly. The queen ants can fly. So there you go. And that's a big part of the original story. They don't get the nest in the desert in time. The queens have escaped with a few of their mates and found pastures new. So they've got to hunt them down across the entirety of the USA, which is just great stuff. Now, so obviously in a remake, you could see all this sort of thing take place. You could have, because in the original, there's a ship at sea where one of the queens has gone into an open hold cover and laid their eggs in there, and the ants have hatched. They're sending out a mayday, a distress call, and you see the ants rampaging through the bridge, and the radio operators getting chopped up in like the mandibles. So imagine seeing that with today's effects. A lot of which could be practical, but en masse it's going to have to be CG. I know we lament that, but it's the only way of seeing an army of giant ants on the rampage, CG, and it still could be great. Now, what is the idea behind this one? Well, Giacchino said that one of his favourite films is Them. And whilst watching it, it only dawned on him years and years later that it was about these are his words, it was about the nuclear age. It wasn't, it was about the atomic age. I know, we're splitting, mutated hairs there, but it was about A-bombs being tested at White Sands and all that, and how the radiation had lingered in the desert and caused these mutated giant ants. So, it's the atomic age. But he said, well, that was the pervading story behind it. Well, what could today's story be? And he said, immigrants. Now, before I go on to explain that, Giacchino In his track listings for soundtracks, for movie scores, almost every single one is a really diabolical pun. It's a play on words, it's a play on the scene that his music is playing over, illustrating. And it can be quite irritating. Some are really funny, some are just like, oh, eye-rollingly bad. And I read this and I thought, immigrants? Immigrants? But he's being serious. He's actually saying about, the theme that I want to go with is immigrants. So you're going to be setting this, I presume, again, in the likes of New Mexico or Arizona or Texas. Border Force, Border Patrol, you know, and the whole thing about illegal immigrants coming over the border from Mexico. Where's that going to fit into a story about giant ants? Because he said the story this time will be immigrants, but told through, you know, a crazy monster science fiction story about giant ants. Well, again, it's not been written yet, so I've got no idea, but I'm willing to bet it's going to go along the lines of, instead of like state troopers, it's going to be, you know, Border Patrol. Either some of their men have gone missing, but they're going to, hang on, we haven't intercepted any immigrants for a while. Where are they? Surely they haven't stopped coming over the border, but where are they? I'll tell you where they are. They've been chomped by the ants, and they will find like remains and the big conical ant's nest, the big hill that they have. They'll stumble across all this. You can have, like in the original movie, you'll have mysterious happenings, bodies found, hints and rumours, terrified people. Maybe they find a load of immigrants who are holed up in a cave somewhere, like they chewed their fingers down to the elbows, you know, and what's been going on? You know, ants, or well, I should say them. The only English word they might know is them. And our hero, like in the original, could be a patrolman. I keep saying Texas Ranger, but it could be that. I don't know, or a state trooper, whatever. He'll lose his partner. Like, I'll go and call this in. You stay here with these. Make sure none of them get away. And then the ants come back again. I don't know. I'm shooting from the hip here, but I am looking forward to this. Giacchino is going to score it as well. Yay! So, like he did with Werewolf by Night, it's only 52 minutes. And I reviewed it, and I've spoken about it since. He crammed a hell of a lot into that 52 minutes of action, suspense, mystery, horror, comedy, great practical effects, some great CG effects as well, and he scored it too, and the score was wonderful. So this for his first directorial debut of a feature-length movie. He'll be directing it, he'll be scoring it. I really do expect great things here. And now he has said he wants to get this into production quickly. He wants to get these talks with the writers wrapped up super quick and get this film produced and put out there by Warner's. Oh, folks, you've just got to do one thing now. Michael, if you're watching, you have got to have the sound of the ants communicating. Their stridulation, it's called. I'm playing the great Bronislaw Kapers score for the original 1954 movie. But there is this, and you guys know it, I've played it a lot before, the sound of the ants when they're communicating to each other. And there was tree frogs, there was bird song, lots of different natural sound effects by natural creatures reversed and looped to make this unsettling noise. Here we go. And there's the desert wind as well, and the sound is wafting through the wind, and they'll be in the desert and they'll just hear this. The hairs have risen on the back of my neck. It's so spectacularly eerie. And they all stop and they listen. What do you think made that? And I think the coroner says something like they're loading the little girl in the back of an ambulance after they found the wrecked caravan that she came from, camper van. And he says, well, winds can get pretty freakish in these parts. But it's the way they all stop and listen. It's almost like the sound of fate. This is the end of humankind. As the professor, there's two professors, one's his daughter, but Senior Professor Medford, Edmund Gwen, who was in Miracle on 34th Street, the original one, he he says, he talks about the biblical overtones of it. You know, we've just looked into the future. Man opened the doorway to the atomic age, and look what we brought through. I'm paraphrasing here. You know, this isn't the glimpse of the future. This is the end of mankind. You know, it's fantastic stuff. And that sound effect, as a child, that haunted me. I used to be in the playground and we'd be playing them. They'd have flamethrowers. See again, they use flamethrowers a lot in this movie. Aliens, they use flamethrowers as well. You can see where Aliens really did take a lot of inspiration from them. Even Ridley Scott's Alien. Tunnels and ductwork and shafts and creeping around, flamethrower. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I think this could be quite alarmingly good. So long as you play it serious. The original movie has moments of brevity, but you need them. There's the drunk who's in a famous sequence, you know. Make me a sergeant and charge the booze. Make me a sergeant and charge the booze. He's seeing the answer, but no one believes him because he's a drunk. And there's other comedy, little snippets of comedy there, but most of the film is played dead serious and quite tragic as well, because there's kids in jeopardy and an incredible self-sacrifice at the end as well. It's got everything, that original movie, everything. Giacchino, if you bring all of that into the modern age with modern effects, you're onto a massive winner, a massive crowd pleaser. But make it serious. A couple of elements of humour, but for the most part, keep it serious and hopefully R-rated. We want to see people getting splattered and ripped up. Of course you do. You want to see what the ants actually do with human beings. You saw it in Starship Troopers. You're going to have to see it with this. Now, there's another eerie noise there, and that's the washing machine, folks. I've got the ants. The ants are all spinning the drum round. And they're spitting little bits of formic acid in to try and bleach all the clothes. I don't know. But that's the washing machine. Now, okay, let's think about how the ants are going to be supersized in this movie. In the original, it's radiation from the atomic bomb tests. Well, what's it going to be this time? Are the immigrants bringing in some kind of, I don't know, almost street trash style alcohol, which is actually toxic, and they're spilling it in the sand, and it's irradiating and mutating the ants there? Of course, I don't know. And also, why would it only be the ants that... There's one for you. Why was it only the ants that became really big in the original movie? What about our friend the tarantula? What about that? That could have happened as well. And maybe in this, you might get that. Who's to say that this film is actually going to be about giant ants? All he said... The theme of this one is going to be immigrants. So I don't know. No, it's going to be giant ants. We need it. The world needs a giant ant movie, but full of limb lopping and people being scythed in half, but loads of spooky tension. A last stand in the desert. A last stand in... Oh God, they're heading for the city. We're going to have to build barricades, get tanks, get helicopter gunships, fighter jets, bazookas. They have all this in the original as well. Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Please make an atom. It does appear that it's going ahead. This is already going ahead. The news only broke yesterday, but I was like, oh, I couldn't sleep all night. I was like, oh, itching. Ants everywhere. Jesus. Listen to that. And with Giacchino scoring it as well, I hope the excitement, because he does tremendous set piece, vigorous, exciting music, pulse pounding and very atmospheric. Come on, folks, let's get behind this. Washing's finished, folks. Note to self, wait till the washing's finished before doing your video next time, Kilt-Man. Right. Anyway, folks, there you go. That's all I know. There's a few ideas, a bit of conjecture there which I've thrown in, but I've just made that stuff up. I do not know where they're going to head with this, even when it's being set. I just think if you're going to remake them, you're going to be down south, you're going to be in the deserts, at least initially, And if your theme's immigrants, well, you're going to be on the Mexican border, aren't you? It's hardly rocket science, which the A-bomb testing was rocket science, as it transpires. Right, folks, comment below and let me know what you think about this, because I'm all for it. And even though I'm a devout hater of remakes and reboots, but I think in this case, it's what we need. Them is a spectacular classic, a masterpiece in its own right, which even if this became a complete travesty, it wouldn't tarnish the original at all. But it's the kind of film where you sit there and you think, oh, I'd just love to see what ants really do. And with today's effects, you could do it. Oh. And maybe now we're going to get that. We now have opened the door to what could be the end of mankind. Folks, I've been and always shall be Kilt-Man. Please, in the meantime, in this ever skin-crawling, horror-horde, crush and crawl and formic acid-filled in-between time, please keep it Kilty, keep it Celtic, and I'm going to see you in a desert setting near you. I like that line I had before. It was all Reds under the beds and communism. But them was ants in your pants and radiation. I should write these things down, I really should.